If you can help someone else, that is better for you than you just helping yourself. You will fulfill more in your heart, in your life, if you do more for others than you expect them to do for you, and you treat people better than you sacrifice yourself for someone else, and that joy and that fulfillment that you get is going to be better than any money that you get or anything like that.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a special guest today, Sheriff Chad Bianco from Riverside County, California. You also are now a gubernatorial candidate. How's it going?
It's going very well.
Great.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, we try to get at least one decent mustache on a month. So,
well, good. I'm glad I filled that bill.
They're coming back. I was talking to some buddies about it yesterday. A lot of younger guys are starting to rock the mustache again. I think it's a power move.
I 100% agree with you.
Do you think it had anything to do with you getting elected? Did you rock a mustache back then?
Back then, I was doing everything. I mean, it's funny trying to find a picture of me now. Everybody, whenever the press calls, they ask my media bureau what I look like today, because I've had a beard, I've had a goatee, I've had nothing, and the mustache. But the mustache is going to stay for a while.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's get into your background a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Utah, very small town in Utah. There was 1,200 people in my town, Helper, Utah. Our county had one high school, so it was a county high school. And good, nice, rural, outdoor lifestyle. I grew up a lot different than Southern California. I moved here when I was 21. And been here since. Came here in 1989.
What made you decide to go to California?
My decide to go to California was actually when I was 11. I went to California for the Little League World Series. I was playing in that, and I was 11 years old. We went to Santa Monica, and people foster homed us. And so there were two of us from my team that were living together with a foster family, and they had a 13-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter, and they pretty much for a little over a week introduced us to Southern California, Santa Monica, the beach, all of those things. And I remember going home and telling my mom and dad that I'm moving to California. They told me that I had to wait till I was an adult. I couldn't leave then. But it was always in me then, and there was everything about California I just absolutely loved. I was an hunting, fishing, outdoorsy kid growing up, but there was just something about that family and the beach and everything that was going on there. It was just very appealing, probably because it was so different. And then life brought me to Southern California, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah, I mean, it's California is definitely the most beautiful state, in my opinion. Not the best managed at the moment, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So far, the only thing we've got going for us right now is the weather. Pretty much the management is destroying everything else, but we're going to get it back.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
32 years.
Oh, wow.
I started in 1993. I ended up back in that day. There was lots of budget problems with law enforcement and government, and law enforcement wasn't really hiring because of the expense to put people through the academy. So if you wanted to be in law enforcement in the early 90s, you had to basically quit the job you were doing and put yourself through a 6-month academy. And that's what I did. And I got hired by Riverside the day after the academy. And that's really the only place I wanted to work. I lived here. I already had a home and a young family, and it worked out great.
And have you been in the sheriff's department the entire time, or did you go back and forth with city police or anything?
No, I've been with Riverside Sheriff since 1993.
Oh, the same organization even.
Same organization. So it's we're a huge organization. We're number 4th largest sheriff's department in the country. Second biggest in California. Los Angeles Sheriff is bigger than we are, but we're very large. I got 4,400 employees. So growing up in this organization, there's always plenty to do. I started in corrections. I went to patrol. I did undercover narcotics / gangs for a while. then started promoting. And then, once you start promoting, all the fun stuff is gone. You get into supervision and management, and then you're just overseeing all the people doing all the good work. But there really was no. I say that now it's different, but back then there was a big loyalty. I mean, you were loyal to the agency that hired you, and your friends might be making more money than you working at a police department or something like that. But there was something about being loyal, and that's missing a little bit now with the younger generation. They chase the bright shiny object. A couple cents an hour, or $1 an hour to them is the world. But the reality is, as we get older and wiser, that really isn't much of anything.
Yeah, it's kind of the difference between, and this is I think a large attitude shift that's happened in the United States over the past, let's call it 40, 50 years maybe. I don't. It's hard to measure exactly when it started, but the difference between chasing success and staying and building success somewhere, right? I think there's a big difference, and I think the outcome of that is also quite different, especially for somebody that wants to put down roots and build something generationally, right? So if your options are to travel somewhere travel somewhere different than where you are now, and I don't even mean geographically, just like one job to another across town. And sometimes it's necessary to do that, but if your options are to go to the next high-paying job, or maybe start your own company, or stay somewhere and build something from within, typically one of those has a longer lasting effect than the other, and it's the one where you build. And I think there's less of an appetite for that now than there has been in the past for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why it is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we talk about this all the time internally, and I think with my kids growing up, and then even they're in their early 30s now, but the younger generation, the teenagers in the early 20s now, I think are going backwards a little bit into where I was more in my youth. And I think it's a part of being comfortable. And I blame my parents a little bit for my success, and where we are. But I think my parents are the generation that it started in. They started very young, so it was their friends really, that my peers that had much older parents. But my kids, I raised them like I was raised, but I know that their friends were not raised like they were raised. And I think that the part about hard work and working your ass off to get something, that diminished for a while. And I think that the younger generation, the teenagers and the early 20-year-olds now are either realizing from their grandparents, or realizing that you can't just sit there and want something for nothing and expect to get it. You've got to go out and work for it. And I think that in my line of work, talking with sheriffs and chiefs and things like that, we think that that's what the generational shift was, is they were more entitled, I think. And that wanting to put in more of yourself to get something out of it was lacking for a little while.
Sure. Well, how do I mean, this is something that I think a lot of parents, a lot of coaches, a lot of middle managers and organizations even have to deal with, probably in this first responder community as well. I know to some degree we had some issues in the military, and now they've been amplified by the weak leadership. But reinstilling this causal connection between effort and outcome in people's brains is proven quite difficult, to be honest. Now, I think the younger generation, the teenagers right now, are starting to pick up on it again, because they see, and part of it is, seeing opportunity in front of you, certainly, because that motivates you to go actually do stuff. But I think that generation is starting to come around a little bit. But my generation and the one after me, so millennial and zennial, I guess, if that's what they are. I can't even remember what the hell you call these things. But there definitely is this expectation of success, which I think is absolute nonsense, right? I mean, why should you expect when all of life throughout this planet, and I'm talking about the entire history of the planet, has been defined by its struggle and overcoming that struggle? Why should you expect to succeed just because? And then why should you expect that attitude to be a component of success? It's nonsense. Of course it's not.
Yeah, human nature and human history, struggle builds character. And if there is no struggle, you don't really have the character. You don't have anything to fall back on, or you don't have anything to keep you grounded or lead you forward. And I think the generation of everyone's a success, everyone's a winner, everyone gets a trophy. I think that was the problem. That was kind of the downfall. And these kids are now saying, wait a minute, everybody isn't a success, everybody isn't a winner, and just sitting here and you giving me a trophy because I showed up, that didn't get me anything. And I think that mindset's changing a little bit, just like you explained, that the younger kids are realizing, man, I got to work harder than those people in front of me, and I can leapfrog past them if I'm working harder. And that's truly human success. The harder you work, I mean, not that you're going to be guaranteed success, but eventually you will. You may fail along the way, but your recovery and that character building of your failures is what makes you a success in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the case, and demonstrable, right? It's not, and the problem is, I don't think we've done a great job. There's some people that are doing well, and we're making progress, but it's the messaging, communicating this to people who have been lied to, really, and it's pervasive throughout our society. Being lied to is a tough thing, man. It's like, first, no one will protect a lie more fervently than somebody who's wasted their time believing it. I don't know if that's spent cost fallacy or if they're embarrassed, if it's a shame mechanism or something, but that's true. And then it's also difficult to know where to start over when you're an adult and you realize that your entire worldview has been corrupted by people who've not been truthful with you, right? Like the most obvious example, the most obvious two examples, rather, are telling young women that they can wait to start a family, and it's just biology, right? This isn't a matter of, if you want to wait, do what you want to do. This is America. You can do whatever the hell you want here. But don't be fooled. You are on a clock. As a woman, you're on a clock, and there's no question about that, right? And the other one is for young men, trying to teach them that their natural masculine urges are something to eschew and be ashamed of. It's like, no, that we've created a serious depolarization problem with regard to femininity and masculinity in this country, and it shows in almost every aspect of social civilization right now. And it's tough to go to, especially I feel a lot of people talk shit to these women who are in their 30s now, and they're like, well, I'm just never going to be able to have kids, so whatever. And they're super upset about it. It's like, yeah, well, you fucked up. It's like, okay, well, they were lied to by all of society for all this time. That's probably the group I feel the worst for right now, because there's no unringing that bell. It's just biology. And
yeah,
as a result of all of the anti-male proselytization that's been going on over the past 25 years, I'm seeing a shocking lack of men walking around with actual shoulders. You know what I mean? And I don't mean just literal physique. I mean the confidence to have your shoulders back and look people in the eye, right? Something that is both. I was just talking to my girl about this the other day. She was going through something tough, and I just look her right in the eyes and very confidently tell her something, right? And she goes, that really moved me, just that presence. I'm like, yeah, that's what men are supposed to be doing. That's to me, that's par for the course. This isn't even something extraordinary.
Yeah, that's human history, and I'm a God-fearing man, and know who is actually in charge. And you can go through the Bible and see that is exactly what men are supposed to be doing. Men are not supposed to be weak. Men are not supposed to be. They're not supposed to go along to get along. And when it comes down to it, men are supposed to be the protectors. They're supposed to be the providers. And you can go sideways into femininity and the importance of women. Of course, women are important. And if a woman chooses to make herself better with a job, then so be it. But that woman that chooses to make her job a mom is just as important as that CEO executive. And it's common that you ask women want a man to take care of them. They not in any sense of the word. They may be independent and they may be strong. I mean, truthfully, I consider myself a strong man. I'm attracted to strong women. I don't want a weak woman. I want a very strong, powerful woman. But my wife also wants someone to take care of her and someone to protect her and her kids. And we've lost that kind of a long time ago, and it was society that pushed that out. It was this whole, you can get into conspiracy theories about why the average testosterone level's 200 right now among men. And the food we eat, the things that they've made us eat, and the things that they've made us put into our bodies to do that on purpose. But it truly is to destroy something that we built that was great. And it is unfortunate that there's so many different narratives and people pushing, especially government, that telling a man it's okay to be a woman, and don't have kids, and if you're a woman you're really a man, so you don't have kids. We're in such a ridiculous place, and it is because men have not stood up and said, this is all BS and enough is enough, and we're going to put a little common sense and reality into this argument, and we're going to just move forward.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's this, and this is another part of it. You mentioned strong men wanting strong women. This is another insidious lie that's being told to young men right now. This is a lie that that's relatively new, actually, in my opinion, and it's part of the, I guess you could say, the right-wing manosphere. These guys who are, they call themselves Sigma males, but a Sigma male is the man in the arena. He's the man standing up and saying something without care because he knows it's right. He doesn't care if anybody gets pissed off about it. That's the man in the arena. Somebody who kind of unplugs from life because it's not fair. You're just a nihilist and a coward. That's not impressive, and it's not new. People have been doing that forever. They tell this lie to young men right now that women don't really have intrinsic value for themselves. They're just weak, and they need to be looked after, and they don't provide value and stuff like this. They should be treated as a commodity or something to someone to get something from or something like this. And it's the most self-defeating, self-fulfilling prophecy of all time. If you have that attitude towards women, or even towards life in general, but especially towards women, you're only going to attract shitty women who fit that mold. And it's going to reinforce your dumbass worldview. And you're going to be miserable and alone, and it's stupid. Like that. One of the things that motivates men in life, and you can say whatever you want to about this, but it's to better ourselves for social standing. And one of those reasons is respect from other men, and then attraction to women. This is literally how all species that exist are designed. And when the short version of this is that you get out of things what you put into them. If you show up with a bad attitude, with stupid preconceptions that are completely anti-biological, right, and behave that way, and then you get a negative result, of course you did. What the hell you think was going to happen?
Yeah. No, it's exactly right, and that's where we find ourselves, and that's why we're finding that it's a little bit frustrating to me because of this, but that's where we are finding that the men that are standing up are completely attacked. And then it shows the ones that, well, I'm just going to back up and I'll quiet down now because I don't want to get into that fight. And it's separating those from the ones that are like, well, if you want to fight, we'll go ahead and fight because we're fighting for the right thing now. And just because you're going to yell at me and tell me that your position is right and not mine, that's irrelevant. We need strong people to stand up for the right things. And I think it's very ironic that the position that we got to today, in my opinion, that started really in 2000 with all the lockdowns and everything else when it happened, is it wasn't men that stood up. It was the women. It was when government started screwing with moms' kids, the moms came out and said, we aren't falling for this. We aren't doing this. And they started protecting their kids. And then it allowed the guys to stand up and say, oh, yeah, what my wife said. And now I'm going to be standing right here with her. And I think it's getting the women were stronger when all of this was, when our families were being attacked, when our kids were being attacked. But now I think that there are more men that are standing up, and it's basically becoming society as a whole now. Everyone's just saying, okay, we've been going wrong for 20, 30, 40 years now. It's time for a course change, and we're going to do it now.
It is interesting to see, and I wonder if that's part of why the younger generation is responding well to this, because they haven't been quite as indoctrinated yet. So they just see things as they are, and then they get hit with this potential propaganda, and they're like, no. Like, this doesn't pass the smell test. Something you're saying is not making sense to me. And I've had this is you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but I've had quite enough of these weak ass men complaining about how bad our society is now. You are a man. You are the one who is responsible for building society and rebuilding it if necessary. That's your job. You're not entitled to complain until you've contributed. That's the price of admission into the complaint department. I was in the infantry, and we complain a lot. We complain about when the weather's good, when it's bad, when the food's good, when it's bad. We don't give a shit. We'll throw pine cones at each other. We're just going to sit around. It's dudes. You know how it is. You've been a sheriff forever.
It's law enforcement's the same way.
Yeah, it's law enforcement. It's firefighters. It's EMS. We're all just sitting around complaining and bitching all the time. That's really 90% of the job, to be honest. But you earn the right to do that when you've done something, right? And this has got to be the price of admission. I say this all the time on every show. I can say it because I think it's a really important thing for people to know. You can control two things in your life: your attitude and your effort, and nothing further. And nobody can make you change either one of those things. Nobody can make you work less hard. Nobody can make you show up with a shitty attitude. And the fact is that you're going to get what you put into it. The more effort with a better attitude you put in, over time, you're going to get a better outcome. That's just how life works. And I just can't, like, this black-pilled nihilism of, I'm not going to participate in this, or I'm not going to do that because of this group's getting off better than I am, or it's not fair that I have to deal with this or whatever. It's like, shut the fuck up and grab your lunchbox and go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really that simple.
It really is, and a little bit away from society and going into what we're dealing with now is the election process in the entire country. I think it's starting to change, especially in this last election. Is that people were just like, well, everyone's cheating, so I'm not going to be a part of it. Everyone, my vote doesn't count, so I'm just not going to vote today. And that mentality over time. You pass that on to your kids, and now no one in your entire family votes because everybody thinks that you don't have a voice, you don't have a say-so, and then truly you've created the situation where you really don't have a voice because you're not stepping up, and you're not being the one, the voiceful, strong person that's standing up for what you believe in and the direction you think we should go. And a couple hundred years ago, our founding fathers set it up to make that course change, but they didn't anticipate. They anticipated that everyone would be as strong as what they were, and that everyone would believe in what they believed. But there's a saying, I don't even know who started or exactly what it says, but it's that part where tough times make strong men make easy times make weak men, and weak men create hard times. And it's very true. And I think that's what we've been talking about. We went through that whole cycle. I mean, it was the greatest generation, the World War I/World War II generation for this country. There's a reason why they called them the greatest generation. They sacrificed everything they had to give us a better life, and then that better life made it easy for us to where now all of these weak men had an easy life that they didn't have to work for, and now we've got to make that course correction.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think every parent of a son, especially right now, is trying to deal with. Like, how do I make – because there's another example I like to give. In the 1950s, if you ask a 17, 18-year-old what his life was going to be like, what he wanted to accomplish, he would say something like, I'm going to find a good job, good career. I'm going to find a woman. We're going to have some kids, and I'm going to try to give my kids a better life than what I had. And it was simple, right? A lot simpler. Now, I mean, this is another thing I like to talk about because it's quite a bit more complicated today than it was back then because of that comfortability. How do I give my kids a better life than what I had? Because my life was pretty good, man. I mean, like I've done most of the things that I've wanted to do in life already, so I didn't have to struggle to stay alive, except for in war. Obviously that's different though, right? Not everybody goes to war, but I didn't have to struggle to stay alive. I didn't have to struggle for food and stuff like that. Certainly I struggled to build companies and do all the things I've done. So the question for me, and I think this is something that men need to be talking to each other more about, just to ideate on the process and try to figure out some solutions, is how do we inject some kind of struggle into these kids' lives, not to punish them, but to give them the gift that we had.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And what that is, I'm not sure. I think that what we're seeing a little bit in society, the struggle right now is is being able to achieve those things that we had. I mean, I never had to worry about whether or not we were going to eat, or whether or not was coming home to a home. And that's where kids are now. It's like, how can I afford gas in my car to get to work and my apartment? Or I certainly can't afford a house, and now I can't even afford gas to go make more money to pay for the more gas. So I think that struggle that they are having, that's a little bit economic, is I mean, it certainly isn't depression level, but it's something that is directly opposite of what they probably either grew up as, or what they know their parents grew up as, and so that's what they're hearing from their parents. So I think, I hope we don't have to relive history over and over and over again. I hope we learn from the past, and that we've already made that pendulum swing coming back down the other way. I just hope it moves a little bit faster than it normally does, and we're in that course correction of where we're trying to make things better with personal responsibility and personal accountability, and hard work pays off. No matter what anyone tells you, hard work always pays off.
It definitely does, yeah. And it's again, I agree with you. I don't part of this is just the natural cycle that things go through. A tree grows, drops seeds, more trees grow, blah blah blah. Death and life are just part of life. It's a cycle of life. But it would be good, I think, to try to better prepare people for the harder time. I think that's probably the only thing we can do, is to make people more resilient. There's a book called The Coddling of the American Mind that I'm a big fan of, Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff. And one of the quotes from the book is, prepare your children for the road. Don't try to prepare the road for your children, because you can't. You can't control every variable downstream, but you can make that motherfucker tough. You know what I mean? And that's really your only option. And in my opinion, like, certainly if you've got generational wealth or something like that, you've got more options. But for the vast majority of people, the only real option you have to make your kids more likely to be successful into the future is to make them smart and tough. Those are the two things that you really need to do. Smart, not like they don't have to be a rocket surgeon or nothing like that, but they better be a complex problem solver. They better understand the Socratic method, right? The ability to look at a problem and really apply actual logic to it and solve that problem, and then be tough enough to persist through it. Those are the only things you could really do, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm very proud of the three boys that I raised, 35, 32, 31. And even my daughter, who's 29, but I raised three very strong, independent men who grew up like I grew up. I made sure that I was the same way on them that my dad was on me. And that part about, giving your kids a better life than you had, I had the perfect life. So I just had to ensure that I gave my kids the same thing that my mom and dad gave me. And I did instill that in them, and it came with failure for them, and it came with having to do things on their own. And they had the mom that was their emotional support, and I was the male that was driving them to be different. And for me, I'm blessed. I think I got that. My kids are have their families of their own, and there's success in their own right. And I know that they've even said they're planning on doing the same thing with their kids that they grew up. They knew they had a different life, but they also experienced their friends weren't treated the same by their parents, and their friends aren't in the same position in life right now as that they are. And they know that it was because they had to suffer a little bit, and they had a little bit harder time, that I made them earn money that I was giving to them. It wasn't just something that they knew they were going to get because they wanted it. And it builds character.
Yeah. And it happens over generations too. I mean, if our generation were to get a little bit weaker, then we are less likely to, because it is a difficult thing to discipline somebody that you care about, for sure. Right?
Absolutely.
Even when you know that it's the best possible thing for them, it's quite a bit easier to try to be friends with your kids. And the from generation to generation, as we just get a little bit weaker, then that resilience that gets created by, like, hey, no, you're not doing this. You're gonna earn it, bud. I want you to have everything, but I also don't want you to be a turd. So you're gonna have to earn it. It's just the way it is. It is a difficult thing, but it's absolutely mandatory. Like there's no negotiation there. You have to actually hold that line into perpetuity. Otherwise, this is what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I say this all the time. There's a very big difference between like and love. If to me to get you to like me, I just got to be nice to you. I got to give you things that you want, so we have this likable friendship. But if I want you to love me, and if I want to love you, I'm going to be hard on you to make sure that you know the right things. You know how to succeed, to do the right things, and some things aren't hard, and some things could be easy. But I'm going to be hard on you now to make it easy for you in the future. And that's the difference between like and love. I didn't want my kids to like me. I wanted them to love me, and I wanted to love them, not like them. And I think that's a huge difference that we've lost track of. That I think that probably our parents and their parents had that, whether they explained it that way or not. That's just what life was back then, and we've gotten a little too easy.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just a matter of leadership, to be honest. And whenever the word leadership pops up, I immediately blame men. Like, it's your job. Just I don't care what state it's in now. I don't care who you think is to blame or whatever. It's your job to fix it, and that's just how it is. And that's a good segue into, you've been in law enforcement for a long time. What made you decide to? I mean, obviously, if you stay in long enough, you're going to climb some ranks to some degree. But running for sheriff of a major American county is something altogether different, right? It's certainly there's some political element to getting promoted at the higher levels in any organization, whether it's government or not government. But actually running for office is something quite a bit different. Now you're talking to not internal folks, but the entire county, like the voters. So what made you decide to do that in the first place?
Yeah, it was a tough decision because that in the environment that I was in, I was certainly sacrificing my future for something that I thought was going to be better. And what I mean by that is we had become a point in our career, or in my career and in our agency, that it was you definitely promoted based on merit up to a level, and then the next level was who you knew. Were you a threat to somebody else, or were you going to benefit somebody else that was above you? And it was apparent in our organization that that's where we were. We didn't have true leadership. We had real failed leadership that was trying to prevent leaders from being a threat to them later on. So it was in my line of work. I was raised by a dad that truly taught me that your worth in life is what you can offer someone else. If you can help someone else, that is better for you than you just helping yourself. You will get more out of it. You will fulfill more in your heart, in your life, if you do more for others than you expect them to do for you. And you treat people better than you sacrifice yourself for someone else. And that joy and that fulfillment that you get is going to be better than any money that you get or anything like that. And so throughout my career, that's really how I was raised. It was all about integrity. I was raised by a dad and two grandpas that contracts were not good. You looked somebody in the eye and you shook their hand, and your word was better than that piece of paper. And so that integrity aspect was something that has just always been big in my life. And I knew as a manager in our organization that we weren't being honest with the public. We weren't being honest with our resources and what we were providing to from a law enforcement service. And I knew that the level that I was at, the only way it was going to get any better was a change at the top. That failed leadership had to be replaced. So ultimately, that is what caused me to want to run for this office. And eventually, that's what the majority of our department wanted too. And I had the entire agency behind me. The all of the line staff, even most of the management level, were all supporting me, just because they knew of my previous 20 years, 22 years in the organization and what I represented. And you mentioned earlier that leadership, the lack of leaders. I like when it's hard for me in the position that I'm at, because I have to talk about leadership all the time. But the only way you know whether or not you're a valuable or a true leader is if someone else tells you. You can't just go out and say, hey, I'm a leader, or thanks for electing me into this top position or promoting me into this position. Now I'm a leader, because that's not life. That's
Right.
not what leadership is. And so it was they saw that in me before, and that's why people rallied behind me. And now, over the last 6 years of being the sheriff, it's really just snowballed into not just my organization, what we've done here and what I did over the last 5, 6 years, standing up to what I really truly do believe, especially in California, is a tyrannical government that transcended into every other law enforcement agency, and now it's countrywide, where nationwide law enforcement considers me one of the top leaders in this profession, and it truly all boils down to me caring more about the organization and about the employees in the organizations than I care about myself. I don't care if people don't vote for me. I don't care if they like me because of what I say. I do things for the right reason, for the right people, and if it doesn't work out for me, so be it. I know that in my life and in my beliefs, I'm doing it for the right reason.
When you say that they weren't specifically honest with the public, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, we lied to the media. I mean, we would tell them we're doing everything we can to provide the best service, and we just need more money. And the reality was, we were going through a time where law enforcement was supposed to be changing. Everyone knows what community-oriented policing is, and it's actual engaging with the community to be partners to make everything better. And we were being run by the management level. The leadership at the time was all big time old school, that cops knew better than everybody, and don't you tell me what to do, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. And so we were lying to them and telling them that we were engaged in this community oriented policing that they all wanted, when internally we all knew that that was a complete lie from our management. And then in my line of work, especially from a leader, once they start lying, I mean, you can't respect anyone that lies. And I mean, if you can't trust someone, especially in law enforcement and military, if you don't trust your supervisor or your leader, I mean, you're not going to follow them to anything. If you trust that they're looking out for you and doing the right thing, you follow them to the end of the earth. Mm-hmm. But if they're liars, and if every time they open their mouth, they're not being honest with you, there is absolutely nothing there, and that's what causes dysfunctionality in either a military operation or law enforcement. We say paramilitary. I think they're relatively close to the same. It's just different missions. But when you lose that integrity, honesty, leadership ability, everything just goes to crap. And that's where we were. And it took the agency coming to me and saying, we think you would be the right person. I didn't say, hey, I'm the best guy for the job, let's do it. It was others telling me, you can do this, we can make this work. And it did. Once I got into the spot and we made the changes to make us better so we could provide a better service, that's really all it needed. And now we've become one of the preeminent law enforcement agencies in the country.
Well, people on the ground hate that lying bullshit, because they're the ones who end up they interface with the public, right? Whatever the public happens to be, whether it's your customer base or whether it's the actual public and you're a law enforcement person. And they become the face of that lie. They're the ones that out there having to address or defend it. And you don't have to imagine what that does to an organization's morale. Most people have experienced that. Even in their normal 9 to 5 jobs, they've had that shit happen, where top level leadership is just full of it, and then they have to go tell, like, the CEO or somebody makes some promise, and then the mid level manager has to go to the customer, like, oh, well, actually, here's the reality of the situation. It's like, that makes you feel like an idiot, and it's. You can see it break down, and especially with a job that is highly scrutinized and public facing at all times. Both of those two things at all times, and police might be one of the only things that are like that, to be honest, because fire just they don't get the heat. No pun intended. They don't get the heat that cops do, because they don't enforce laws and stuff like that. It becomes a real problem when morale dips, because you've got to be on and alert all the time. Like, there's no seconds off. People say no days off. There's no seconds off when you're out there on patrol. We've seen it over the past 5 or 6 years, ambushes all over the place and stuff like that. And then, beyond just the potential threat. It's having somebody that's operating at the top possible level, because it's an important job. Like, we expect a lot out of these men and women. We expect them to be elite. We expect them to be highly trained and make good decisions under chaotic situations. And you can't do that when you're distracted. There's this old saying, a distracted soldier is a dead soldier. And if your officers are out there distracted by the politics of the office, they're not capable of doing their job at 100% anymore. And that affects public safety. It can't happen. It cannot happen like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I know that's the number one responsibility of my position. I'm an elected official, so some people say I'm just a politician, or I have to appease everybody, and I have to work with county government, and I've got these big budgets, $1 billion budget I have to manage, and all of those things, which is all true. But my number one mission and goal is to make sure that the morale of all of the people doing the work stays positive and stays with the mission. I can give direction, and then I have to make sure that everybody's staying on that direction level and with the mindset of going in the right direction. Because what we said before about we just sit around and bitch and complain, that's true. But it's good, because for someone that may be listening to us say that, it might sound like a bad thing, but it really isn't. Yeah, we may bitch and complain about it, but we're all on board to do the right thing and moving forward. And that has to be my number one goal, is to make sure that the morale of my organization doesn't negatively influence the service that we're supposed to be providing. And that's my daily battle. Not that I don't want to say that I have to battle that every day. I just have to ensure that when something, a little flame starts up somewhere, I've got to go address it to make sure it doesn't spread any further.
Yeah, and then you're obviously grooming the next generation of leaders is a big part of that as well. And I think, to me, the biggest part of it is setting the standard and doing things the right way yourself. Anybody that's ever raised children or trained soldiers or police knows this. People listen to what you do, not what you say. And setting that example is the most important thing you're ever going to do. It's why, as a leader, you should never ask anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself, or you haven't at least done in the past, or something like that. And we need it more now than ever. How would you say that? How would you say Riverside County is different now than when you took office? I think it was 2018 when you started as sheriff, right?
Yeah. It's night and day. From the law enforcement world, we changed from a reactive agency to a proactive. We went from a leadership mentality of you just do the minimum, and you answer calls for service, and you try and make people happy, but you don't do anything to rock the boat. And I came into this saying that's the wrong way of keeping people safe and of trying to maintain order. You have to be proactive in that. You have to be proactive, going to find the element that's causing the problems and fix them or stop them before they actually cause the problems. So my deputies, we went from, my mentality was always wondering about whether or not I was going to get in trouble for doing something. And now the deputies know that I've got their back no matter what, as long as they do the right thing. And for the most part, we're all trying to do the right thing. We make mistakes, and they know that if they make a mistake, as long as it was not an ill-intentioned mistake, they know I don't care about that. We all make mistakes. We just fix them. And so that mentality of us going out and making a difference and being that proactive law enforcement agency, that our mission was to arrest people. It was to go find the people who were victimizing others and arrest them for what they did, or arrest them before they were able to get to somebody's house. Stop a vehicle, and if you find guns and masks and whatever inside that vehicle, you prevented a robbery or a murder or something from happening, and it was all because you were proactive trying to find something. And I think that I've changed that across the board. We've changed our pursuit policy, the way we chase criminals. You don't get away with anything here. And there are agencies that have gone away from pursuits. And I get the argument that bad things once in a while will happen in a pursuit, where the person being pursued will crash a car and they may die or they may injure someone else. And those are horrific, and we don't ever want those to happen. But the alternative is you let criminals learn that all they have to do is run and they're not going to get caught. then no one ever gets caught. And so that mentality for us is we have a zero tolerance for crime in this county. And if you're going to victimize somebody, you can expect something from us. And I've said this before during the protests and the riots, and when law enforcement was getting the threats that we're going to come after you and everything else. And I was very clear, and I said, if you are going to bring a fight to us and you are going to attack us, you are probably going to suffer a very violent death, because we are not going to give in. We are not going to allow you to do those ridiculous things to destroy the fabric of our society. We are the line between sanity, insanity, and good and bad, and that's the mentality we take. So with that, then that carried into government shutdowns and closing down churches and businesses and keeping people in their house if you don't wear a mask and all that crap. That I stood up and said, we aren't doing that. I mean, we're not going to do that to our society for the first time in American history. And so that brought a lot of people from other agencies into my agency. And it brought a lot of business and residents from other counties in California into Riverside County. And it was just a mentality. It's that leadership mentality of doing the right things for the right reasons, and people will follow you, and people respect that. And that's what we've become. The entire nation has a problem with recruiting and retaining law enforcement right now. And I will have to admit that we do have that retention problem, because we have people that are getting out early, changing careers just because of the negativity that's directed towards us and everything. But we are probably one of the only agencies, definitely in the state and possibly even the country, that we do not have a hiring problem. We have people knocking down our doors to work for us. And I think it's that mentality that we have here, that we are here for a reason, and we're not going to forget that reason.
Yeah, it's when all this kicked off, the the pandemic stuff, if you want to call it that, when all the stupid shit began, I started telling people that they needed to turn to their local sheriffs, because they are, in most states, the last line of defense against overreaching state power. It's not going to be the courts or the Supreme Court or anything like that for most people. You're just not going to, it's 3-4 years before something like that even makes it. For immediate assistance, I guess, in that regard, for ordinary people, the sheriff is the person to go to, because when sheriffs refuse to enforce stupid shit, then it doesn't get enforced. That's how it works, because you're an elected official. And,
right.
Nobody can just come make you do stuff, because the people elected you. And I think it's a very important and powerful position in this country. And you were one of the people that we talked about specifically back then, because you were pretty vocal. Like, we're not doing this. Like, you can, if you want to wear your mask, you want to stay home, you want to get vaccinated, do whatever you want, man. This is America. Do whatever you want. But you're not going to tell other people what to do. You're not going to tell them they can't go see their dying family member, or they can't go to church. It's just not appropriate in any sense of the meaning of that word, or under the legal system that we've adopted. It's nonsense. And what was it? I'm curious, what was it like, and what was your mental process during that period? Because a lot of people kind of got slow rolled into it with the 2 weeks to flatten the curve bullshit, and then it completely went off the rails. About a week into that, they started doing all this other stuff. There's a lot of pressure to force compliance. There was a lot of pressure to fire people, to lock people down, and all this stuff. And what was going through your head at the time?
Yeah, just so you know where my head is I've always thought that I'm doing the right thing. I for the right thing for other people, and there's a very strong correlation between the oath that I take. It's almost word for word, and of a military member and a law enforcement officer. And I think that the entire huge distinction that you don't realize, and we didn't realize until that time, was the true impact and meaning of that oath. It's easy for a military person when you swear to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, that foreign is what our military is for. And never did I actually think that I would have to be defending in a law enforcement realm against my own government. that domestic part is something that's just another word that got added on there that you don't think about, because we all want to protect against the foreigners that come here that are going to hurt us, but you don't believe that it's going to come from your own government. So when this happened, and when we started with that whole 2 weeks, there was a build up to that. And before we actually got to the 2 weeks, there was about a 2 to 3 week period where we were being fed from the media these pictures from China of people just laying in the street in a pool of blood, and basically just scaring us all that, oh my God, if this virus gets here, it's going to wipe us all out. And they even said 40% of the people that get it are going to die. And so for me, I remember thinking, if this gets here in mass, how am I going to function without 40% of my department? And then from a personal perspective, it's like, Jesus, I mean, there's 6 people in my family, which 40% aren't going to make it. And so there really was that fear. And so I do have to admit that that when they said, don't come home don't come out of your homes, just stay home, enjoy a 2-week vacation so we can get past this. It was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea if it's going to save 40% of us from dying. And then, but the problem was that during that time, I'm having daily briefings from our government, and we're talking from the medical world about this virus.
With the actual statistics.
Yes. And this is the problem of including a law enforcement person, because my entire existence and the ability for me to be successful, everything is based on truth and a lie. Yeah, I mean, there is no gray. There is black and white. It's either right or wrong, truth or lie. There's no in between. And so while I'm listening to all of these briefings and they're going on from day to day to day, and now I'm 2 weeks in and I'm being told something completely different than what I was told 2 weeks ago, and they're saying it with the same authority and the same intensity. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's not what you said yesterday, and that's not what you told us 3 weeks ago. So are we even doing the right thing now? And then from a law enforcement perspective, I remember sitting in the back of the room with the fire chief, and we're just listening to all of them talk, and really it's just nonsensical. It's a whole bunch of government people that have never in their lives had to deal with an emergency. And so the fire chief and I are in the back, and we're like, my God, I mean, we could solve this for them right now if they'd let us, but the medical world and the health world is what took over, and they pushed the people that make those emergency decisions daily, they pushed us aside. And so then we got to the point where, okay, it's done. And my board was going to decide to close churches and close schools and make you stay inside your house. And to me, that was like, my God, this is the first time in the history of our country that we are taking away the freedoms of our people. And for me, I never get sick. I wasn't afraid of getting sick with this virus because I've always considered myself, I need to stay healthy. I need to watch what I eat. I need to exercise because I know my immune system is good. And so I wasn't afraid for myself, but I knew other people, you probably should be afraid because you're not healthy anyway. But to tell people you can't open your restaurant that's going to feed your family, but the liquor store can stay open, or the cigarette store can stay open. It's like when that started happening and they started come up with essential people and started saying who is essential. And I just remember I knew, my wife and our kids were gone, so we would go out to eat all the time. And our favorite restaurant, our favorite waitress, our favorite server, we knew she was a single mom, and we knew she had 2 jobs. And I just remember seeing her face and saying she's no longer going to be able to provide for her baby because she works in the food industry, but the liquor store people are still going to be fine. And, whatever else they're saying was non-essential. And I'm like, everyone's essential. Everyone's job is essential because that's how we survive. And I had enough. I was listening to a board meeting one day. I'm sitting at my desk just like this, and I'm watching it online, and I'm listening to all the comments of all the fear-mongering and the dishonest things that were being said. And it was obvious that our board was going to go down that path. And I remember calling my wife and telling her, I'm like, I'm going over there, and I'm going I'm going to tell him what I think, and I'm going to tell him we're not doing that here. And they can come up with whatever plan they want, but unless I agree to it, there's nothing being enforced, and we're not going to enforce it. And she was like, "No, my God, you can't do that." And I said, "I have to. It's the right thing to do." And I walked across the street and walked in that board meeting, and because it's me and because of the position I have in the county, I didn't have to wait in line like everybody else. They just saw me there and they put me right at the front of the line, and I said what I said, and it blew up. And I think it's because deep down, the majority of the population, that's what they were all thinking too. They just wanted somebody to stand up and say the obvious. And I thank God I had a platform to do it, and it spread rapidly.
Yeah, that's it definitely did. I remember those days, and it's back to something you said about you mentioned the fire chief being involved. It's shocking to me. I lived in Oakland for a long time and worked in security and emergency management specifically when I was there. A little bit for the government, but mostly as a private contractor. And it's shocking to me, even with the progressive politics in California, that it went so wrong there. And you could apply this to the fires as well. We don't really have time today to get into that as well, but you could apply this to the fires as well. But like, because Cal Fire basically invented emergency management.
Oh yeah,
The modern version of
100%.
it, the entire ICS 300, 400, all this stuff that the federal government uses came from Cal Fire, from Southern Cal Fire specifically, right?
Yes.
That's who I took all the ICS classes with, was Cal Fire guys who were going through it. It's shocking to me that, but because the incident command system isn't just about a hierarchy. It's about it's Socratic. It's like, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. And it's all based on, just like anything else, good data. Garbage in, garbage out is something we say when it comes to data processing. If you put garbage data in, you're going to get a bad result out. And if you lie about what the reality of the situation is, you're going to get wild. And so the question is, because we knew it was a lie pretty early. Within about a month or two, we knew that it was like old people that were really old and people
Yeah.
who were already sick or super obese or something were really susceptible to this. We knew that really quickly. People will try to say we didn't know it until sometime later. We knew it, that you could find articles about it in April and May of 2020 about saying
Yeah.
this exact thing. So it was just not true. But we continued to feed that bad data into the system, and of course we got a bad outcome. But it is shocking to me to some degree, even in California where things are crazy sometimes, that persisted for so long.
Yeah. For a long time, and it was our government. It was the government, by declaring an emergency. Our governor had 100% complete control of our government, and he could just, with a stroke of a pen, could do absolutely anything he wanted. And there's a reason for that. I'm not saying that shouldn't be there. The problem that we experience is if you have the wrong person in that leadership position that is politically driven or politically motivated or agenda driven, that's a bad aspect of our government. But unfortunately, it's a necessary part of our government. It's just designed to have a real leader, or a leader of people, or someone that truly cares about your state or your people more than an agenda. And we kept that state of emergency longer than anyone in the country, because that ensured that all of the craziness that was going on with mask mandates and vaccine mandates and all of those things could be forced by the government because of this emergency order that was issued because of the pending disaster. And it seriously highlighted for the rest of the country, really, the complete failure of California government.
Yeah, and now, again, we mentioned it before, but you're running for governor now, and my only real question about that is, what do you want people to know about you, about your principles as it pertains to law enforcement, but also as it pertains to California as a state and the United States, because it's the largest state in our union, 40 million people plus now. What are things about you, first principles and stuff like that you want to know, that you want people to know about you that they might not already know?
Yeah, I guess politically, I am without a doubt as conservative fiscally as you could possibly get. There's sometimes am I really a Republican? Do I there's a lot of things I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm certainly not a Democrat. I'm not even close to a Democrat. And, I don't want to be independent. I think independent shows a little weakness, that you don't want to stand up for one or the other. And nothing against independent people. It's just, I think if it was a real party, I think it would be great. Or if we could rally around that, that would be great. The common sense party, maybe, not the independent party. But fiscally, I don't like paying my taxes. And I don't like paying my taxes because I don't like where the government spends it. And I don't think they spend it appropriately or wisely or efficiently. And we're finding that out now. Our taxpayer money is being completely wasted for the benefit of others, whether it's private people or whether it's other countries. Americans are not benefiting from the exorbitant amount of taxes that we pay. And California is the highest in the country. So fiscally conservative, without a doubt. I'm obviously my priority and my belief is integrity, honesty, and law enforcement. Public safety and infrastructure is and should be the number one goal of government, and everything after that is fluff. But if we are not providing for the safety of our residents, our businesses, our kids, and if we are not providing the infrastructure for our roads, our water, our power, our anything that makes us thrive or makes us capable of living, is the responsibility of government to provide, and that's why we willingly pay taxes. But all of these other things that waste money on, that's where I draw the line, and I'm a firm believer against that. So in this run for governor, it's my truly it's the integrity. I think where we are in California, you kind of mentioned this earlier, the entire country truly is starving for someone or something that they can believe. They can't believe the military. They can't believe our government. They can't believe our politicians. It's just we've come to a point where we expect them to lie to us, and so that's become our reality. And we're starving for someone to want to do the right thing, tell us the truth, even though we might not want to hear it. Just tell us the truth, and then let us know that you're going to work to fix it. And I think that my 32 years of doing this, particularly the last 6 of being the sheriff, has shown that that's exactly what I am. And I say this all the time, and I've been doing this after announcing. It's been 3 weeks now, almost a month, and I can honestly say without a doubt that I will be the only person in this race that has already proven my leadership ability, and that I will do the right thing in a tough situation. And I will make those hard calls and those hard choices for the betterment of everyone. And everyone else is either going to be lip service, or they're going to tell you that they're going to do it, but they haven't actually proven it to you over an extended period of time.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of certainly nobody that's in California politics can make that claim.
No. Not at all. And I think it's almost like a default. I got into a minor argument today with someone because he told me that I do a great job of saying all of the bad things of California, but I'm not saying what I'm going to fix or how I'm going to fix it. And it's like, well, I think that's the difference in mentality of you and I. If I'm telling you all the things that are broken, why would you think I wouldn't fix them? If I'm telling you that taxes are too high, why do I have to, in the next breath, tell you that we have to lower taxes? That's a common sense thing. And the example I said is I was in my car when I was having this conversation, and I'm listening to the radio. I drive a patrol car, and I'm listening to the radio as we're going to a call for service that a person is holding his wife hostage and going to kill anybody that comes to the house. And I told him, I said, I have this situation that we're dealing with right now. It's an emergency. Someone's threatening to kill himself and his wife and any cop that comes in. We are going to fix that situation. That is a bad situation, wrong situation. And I told him, I said, how do you think I'm going to fix that? And it's just dead air on the phone. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to fix it. But I know that when we get there, we're either going to talk him out or we're going to kill him. But we know we're going to fix the situation. We don't know how we're going to get there. I don't need to tell you how I'm going to fix that situation. You just need to know that I know it's wrong and it has to be dealt with. And I think that's the difference, the mentality, I guess, of law enforcement is when we go into an emergency situation, and it can even be a military, when you go into a hot situation, there's no such thing as a paper out. You can't write it down on paper what you're going to do to get out because you just got to get out and you've got to end that, fix that. and you've got to be able to improvise and do whatever you have to do to make it happen. So I think that's the difference in me in California. I would agree with everyone that the entire state's broke. Regulation, we have too much regulation, too much taxes, too much indoctrination in our schools. Our schools spend too much money per capita, and we're the least proficient in anything for our kids. We're failing them. We're the worst in homelessness in the entire country, the highest home costs in the entire country. And all of those things need to be fixed. We need to make sure we address all of those government imposed costs on all of those issues. And so to individually spell them out, I think it's almost a waste of time. I'm identifying all the things that are broken, and you have to know that every single one of those things are going to be fixed when I get there.
Yep. That's pretty much. It's an odd thing to say to somebody who's just listed problems that, well, you don't have a plan. Like, when you just heard my plan, dude.
Yeah.
It's a very odd thing to say, but I mean, I guess that's their job, is to manipulate things. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how all this goes, and certainly we support you. I mean, it is both our largest and most beautiful state, in my opinion. Maybe, I mean, that's the latter part is subjective, but it's definitely our largest state, and we need it to be strong. I mean, what we don't want is our largest state losing congressional seats because people are fleeing because it sucks. You know what I mean? That we don't want that. It's a bad look for America. It's bad for our economy when you go from a $50 billion surplus to a $150 billion deficit as a state over the course of 2 years because of incompetence. Unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Yeah. You're the largest state. You've got to lead the way. That's how it works. Like, the big's got to be leading. That's just the way it is. New York and California need to get their shit together, and hopefully, people will. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened over the last couple of years that has either sent people packing out of California, or at least hopefully woken them up a little bit. So I'm definitely looking forward to this campaign, and you should do well, in my opinion. I think the conditions are set for a little bit of a rebirth in California right now. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The stars are kind of aligning, that people are waking up. My goal is not only to fix California, but all of those people that left, that had their California dream fade away and they left to find it somewhere else. My ultimate goal is to make sure that every single one of them come back. I know that most wish they could have stayed, and they truly were forced out by government, and we're going to make it better. It's a horrible saying, but it's, so goes California, so goes the rest of the country. And because we are the largest, because we have the largest economy of any of our states, unfortunately that is true. But the disaster of California is what we've been doing to ourselves over the last 30, 40 years is rubbing off on other states in the country. And you brought up New York. I think New York and California right now, the governments of both states are trying their absolute best to see who can be the worst. And it's going to take leadership in both of those states to turn things around, so we can right the rest of the country.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to all these people today. Certainly, we look around at the leadership in America right now, and again, we've all been in these situations, whether in military, law enforcement, or just your regular job, wherever it happens to be, or just the local politics or the state or federal politics, where you can see the immediate effects of bad leadership, and you can see the immediate effects of good leadership as well. I mean, we went from an absolute immigration crisis to crickets within a couple of weeks, just with leadership. Yeah. That's all it takes, right? Sometimes all it takes for a lot of these problems is just to have somebody who will say, no, that's stupid. We're not doing that, right? And we're very much looking forward to this campaign. Let us know if we can help you out with it at all. And again, thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was great being here. Good talking to you. Love you guys.
Yeah, you as well, sir. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.